pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to start just by pointing out, in the very unlikely case of an emergency, all the exit doors are marked. Use the nearest one and follow the signs to the outside. With that, I would like to ask that we make a motion that we approve the meeting agenda with one change, which would be to have an executive session happening between items G and H. So we would have an executive session to discuss matters leading to the employment of a particular person before item H.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, motion Mr. McCarthy, second Mr. Loyer. Any discussion? I'm sorry, give me a second. So McCarthy, Loyer, our board clerk is off this week on vacation, so we're asking Mrs. Fishman to fill in, making sure we got that. Any discussion on that? There being none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move to the open forum. I do have two blue cards tonight. The first being from Mr. Brian Butler, who would like to make some remarks about school monitors. Brian, if you can come up to the podium here, they'll have a microphone for you.
Okay, yeah, no, that works. My name is Brian Butler. I'm a student here at the high school. I have come tonight to speak about the hall monitors, our school monitors here. I wanted to express my appreciation for them and all that they do for our school. They are really essential for security and the support of the emotions of our students. Here are just some of the basic tasks that they do every day, and there really are many more, but here is just a list that I came up with off the top of my head. Escort to dismissal if a student has to leave early. Elevator duty, ISS escort, emotional support of students in the hallway. I'd like to elaborate on that. Depression is a rampant issue in schools nowadays. It is really sad that it is, but it really is a very sad issue that it occurs in that way. But elevator duty is something that they, also do, and emotional support is something that they really try to help students with every day. I'm sorry, I'm I'm not used to this, so I'll just tell you, with the elevator duty, we have many handicapped students and staff. They unlock the elevator for them every day, and they are very supportive to those with special needs. I am a student of special needs myself. I suffered from a brain surgery back in 2011, leaving my leg, which is kind of trembling right now, partially paralyzed because that's part of my nervous system being damaged. That's why I'm shaking right now amongst nervousness. But of course, I also, I said emotional support, and depression is rampant. So let me get back to that. I kind of swayed, but emotional support, rampant is depression. So the hall monitors I have seen daily in our school's hallways, here and at the middle school and at the elementary schools, giving emotional support to students who need it, because, many times our students do not feel comfortable going to staff on their own and discussing these issues, so they go to the hall monitors with whom they are comfortable, and they love to speak to the hall monitors because they're so kind and so compassionate every day. I do not know what we would do without them. I mean, really, and they have referred these students, such students with these issues, to the appropriate staff who can manage them. Our guidance counselors, who are wonderful, our psychologist, Mr. Wood, upstairs, they're wonderful people, and really, without those hall monitors, I really don't know if some of those students would be able to get the help that they need. And that's something that really worries me. So hall pass checking, I'm moving on now. Hall pass checking, video monitoring of these cameras that you see above us. First-hand witnessing of fights, they hear it first. The hall monitors do. The school monitors hear it first. They get it from the students who trust them, and they go right to them instantly. They enforce the code of conduct. They monitor the doors. They monitor suspicious activity. One instance, I can tell you, there was a father who was here for a meeting with one of our executives, and he was in the building wandering around. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. And I saw this person. He looked very suspicious. He wasn't suspicious after all. He was just a parent. But, a parent today, someone else tomorrow. That's how I look at it. I was able to report him to a school monitor who was able to direct him to where he was supposed to be. And if that hall monitor hadn't been there, I don't know really what would have happened. I really worry about that if it had been somebody different. I would like to bring up bathroom monitoring. Our students sometimes, since there aren't cameras in the bathrooms, they feel compelled to hide in the bathrooms. Our hall monitors ensure that that doesn't happen. And it really does happen. I mean, every day I think we can agree that, students try things that they shouldn't try, and, the hall monitors kind of prevent that. We have fight intervention when there is a fight, which is rare in our building, thankfully. The hall monitors intervene and they can break it up. There is lunchroom monitoring, which kind of ties into the fight intervention, since most fights usually tend to happen during the lunch period. We have senior study hall monitoring, internal safety, because that is a big thing. They see it first. They see these people who aren't where they are supposed to be, and they go and they direct them to where they should be and where they should go. And then BOCE's attendance. They do all these things that are really, they do all these things every single day. And these are a lot of different tasks, and it is not an easy job. It is very hard. I mean, they have students who disrespect them. They have, not much appreciation for what they do, and it really is important, I feel, to express that appreciation, because I see and understand how hard of a job it is, not to a full extent, because I'm not a monitor myself, but I really would like to express that appreciation because I think it's very important to do so.
Even though we don't generally respond to blue cards, I did simply want to point out I've known Brian for a long time, since he was a very young man. And Brian, this may not be what you like to do, and you say you're not good at it, but I think we'd all agree he's pretty darn good at it. So well done, and thanks for taking the time this year. Next would be a blue card from Mr. Mike Doust. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm wearing Troop 709's uniform tonight, and thank you. I'm too tall. I'm wearing Troop 709's uniform tonight, and I'm not here to represent that right now. Some of our scouts are here about communications merit badge, and coming to a meeting like this is a requirement. Some are here because they're with the robotics team. We'll talk about that later. I personally was involved as a parent of a junior here at school that's on the lacrosse team, also plays for the football team, and my concerns were as to where we are with this damage to the athletic fields. There's been some news media about it. I'm just very concerned for my son's opportunity to play on these fields. Didn't know, if the board had much to tell us or, an update on what's going on with that. That's really all I was here about, which I feel kind of belittled after the young man that was ahead of me that had a lot to say, which was very moving to me. And yeah, he's good at what he's doing. He says he's not. He's way better than I'll ever be. But my concerns were mostly with the athletic field. I'm not here to make a big uproar about it. I'm just a concerned parent.
No,
That's all I really have.
thank you for the comments.
you.
So I kind of whispered over to Mr. Colabufo. He was going to cover it in his superintendent's report and update, but he's willing and able to offer it now, so I'm sure since
Either way, we could wait till then, or
That's fine. I can address it.
well, I'll sit down because I don't want to rebuttal. I just want to.
No. No, and we respect what you do with
Thank you
Troop
very much.
D. So, what I can give is the update, and again, of a very unfortunate situation. What I can tell you is what we know is fact right now. There is an investigation being led by the state troopers. Fact, there were individuals that picked 2 locks, adults, not students. Fact, we're not looking at students with their plastic shovels that went through turnstiles. It would be remiss of this group and myself, especially when you have students in here with the troop that they're in and what their ideals are. The bottom line is this simple. There were 2 gates that the locks were picked, that the evidence was very clear on the surveillance video. The person running the investigation of troopers has all this information, and just alone, the picking of 2 locks warranted an investigation. And that's it, and that's where we're at. What I can tell you is, now that the snow is melting, Paul Brissett, who's in the audience, who's head of building and grounds, was able to get a professional in that has to recertify the track. And it's done every 2 years when the track is under warranty. And they say, for purposes of safety and the negligence on the district, it's important that we continue with every 2 years. That is right now, this spring. So as a result of that, that track is going to be, every area and how they do their impact testing on turf will be tested. If they feel that it still meets the safety threshold after power equipment has been put on there, then we can have the stadium and turf and all the stuff that goes on that we normally would. I'm not sitting here condoning people. I know that people can read things in the media or on Facebook and social media. My focus was that 2 gates were picked. Whether people say it was done for a good reason or whatnot, I have a responsibility. I saw that. Many people saw that. The troopers saw that. And then it became in their hands. And that's really where it is, and I think it's become and going in 1,000 different directions. But for us to see people picking locks and not act on that and keeping that quiet, if it could result in possibly having to cancel the stuff in the spring, what I wouldn't want is people saying, here we are, there's the transparency, what did happen there, why are we not knowing this? So once those 2 locks were picked, which they clearly were, and that's on the evidence, that's part of the footage, then it moved forward with an investigation. It's unfortunate, and that's where we're at with that right now. Okay?
So we don't really know if there really is any damage.
Well, no, what we saw is that there was damage. To the extent of the damage, we could only see what wasn't covered in snow as it was plowed. So again, there was a lot more snow at the time with the banks and whatnot when this all happened. So if nothing was said, we wouldn't know until that was melted of the extent of, will that damage now bring it within the impact measure that I believe the state allows, and it gets into weird jargon, but it can't be higher than 165, or sorry, it can't be higher than 200, and 2 years ago it was at 156. If we didn't move forward this investigation, and then somebody went down there and got hurt, then they would say what was covered up. There's no reason to cover anything up. We're moving forward. Nobody, myself or this board, are looking at any of the students because they had plastic shovels or anything like that. The investigation is really centered around the picking of those locks. That's all. You're welcome.
Tom, just to confirm, this certification test is already scheduled for
Wednesday.
This week.
This Wednesday.
So, okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you both for your cards. There being no other cards, we are going to move on to our special presentations to the board. Turn it over to Mr. Colabufo, and we are looking forward to all of them, particularly the first one.
I love this. I've always been into robotics and opportunities that provide our students with 21st century skills, but also with a lot of the jobs that are out there. The skill sets that these students possess will clearly bring them far. I was thrilled to see how successful they were. So I would like now, if they can come up, I would like them to each introduce themselves and bring some of this cool stuff up. But I wish my own sons were here to see this. So at that point, the floor is yours. And first off, a round of applause. Great job and congratulations.
Hi, I'm Spencer. I'm the Central Square Robotics Club president, and I'm a junior. I'm the lead designer on the team, and that's what I do.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the vice president. I'm a junior. I'm one of the lead builders on the team.
I'm Ethan. I'm the programmer. I'm a freshman, and I've been on this team as long as these guys.
I'm Forrest. I'm just a builder. I don't have a fancy name like these guys, but I've also been on the team for about as long as these guys.
I'm Noah. I'm a freshman, and I've done this for 4 years.
I'm Sawyer. I'm a junior, and this is only my second year.
All right. This is just the VEX team that we have right here. We also have a First Tech Challenge team. Thank you, Ethan. That we do. This is just the VEX team that we have present with us today. There's a few more members that we have there. There's only 6 of us that are on the VEX team. So why don't we give you guys a little bit about VEX. What is VEX? So VEX is it is a robotics competition, and each year they come out with a brand new challenge. Thank you. And each year they have something new. A few years ago they had these foam balls that they flaked everywhere, but we would launch them into a net. Before that, we had these skyrise pieces here, where we would take these cubes and these pieces, and we would stack the cubes on. If you want to try it out, Ethan. Those are a few of the game elements from that year. Just last year, we had these giant yellow foam jacks, which didn't quite get as everywhere as the balls, but and we would launch these back and forth over a fence. So, and this year we have these cones, and these cones are laid everywhere around the field. And this robot right here is the one that we built. Its job is to pick up all these cones individually, one at a time, and to stack them on these mobile goals right here, and to pick these up and to score these as well. There's also stationary goals that we can pick up and score cones on those too. So that's our robot right there. So it's not. There you go. I think we're good. Yep, we're all good. Almost. So this robot right here, I can drive. You want me to?
So now that we have our drivers for the competition up, the robot here, last year we went to Worlds as well. It was a really heavy robot. It was at like 23 pounds. This year we made it a lot lighter. But this robot won the Excellence Award at the state championship a week or two ago or something like that, which is the highest award that you can win at a competition. There was a good 66 teams there, I think. And so the criteria for an Excellence Award is basically you have to be a top team with a really good robot. We're actually the #1 team at the competition in the qualifying matches where everyone faces a random team.
That is way better than the garbage man does with my recyclable bins. That is way better.
Ethan, do you want to talk about what you guys just accomplished?
As in like what? Like point wise or?
What in the whole tournament?
All right. So the Excellence Award is given to the top overall team in the competition. You have to have a very strong engineering notebook, and ours isn't just strong, it's actually a really big engineering notebook. This is our documentation of our design. A few competitions ago, when we had a slightly lighter robot, this thing was a bit heavier than our robot. And you have to show really good sportsmanship and ability to talk to the judges and the referees. And the Excellence Award actually qualified us for the World Championship in Louisville, Kentucky over April break.
We went to 6 competitions this year, and we won awards at 5 of them, actually. We have, this is the Excellence Award from the state championship. We have 1, 2, 3 more Excellence Awards that we won at all the other competitions too. Not to mention Tournament Champion, Judges Award, Robot Skills Awards for performance. We also, robotics isn't just about building a robot, it's more than that. You know, there's so many things. There's STEM, there's science, technology, engineering, math, there's marketing, there's teamwork, there's strategy, there's electronics, socialization, there's also networking, and all these really cool things can all go right into robotics. And a lot of it's actually behind the scenes. You know, a lot of the things you see, you only see the robots, and you get to see all these really cool people who are right along with it on the team. And there's all sorts of really awesome things that go right into robotics. In the future, we're looking to have more teams. We're looking to have VEX IQ, and for like elementary and 6th grade. And as of right now, we have 2 middle schoolers right now that are going to compete on a VEX team this following year.
So VEX IQ is everyone here is like familiar with like what Lego looks like and all that. So it's kind of like Lego. It's simpler. There's the programming stuff for it, and it kind of leads right into this. It's quite suitable for in elementary teams. There's a competition in February next year at the the Museum of Science and Technology that can qualify a team for the state championship, which would qualify them after that if they do well there for the World Championship.
So VEX IQ is another great way that we can actually introduce. This is VRC, VEX Robotics Competition. But that's kind of some of the really cool things that we've been doing with this robotics team since we've been here, allowed to have the club at the school and have the team started at the school. Some of the things we've been having, this robot runs on a 12-foot by 12-foot field, and each time it's been, we've had to set it up every single time in Mrs. Vance's room, and possibly if we could have a set place for the field, that we wouldn't have to set it up every time with all the game elements. That'd be really awesome. Also, we'd like to thank a few people. We'd like to thank Mrs. Lisa Fox for help with the business purchasing and the departments for the help. We'd like to thank Mrs. Ladd for all the help that she's given us. And when we qualified for Worlds, they only give us a short time to register for the World Championship, and the payment is pretty big. And they were just a really, really huge help. We'd also like to thank Mrs. Vant for her great support. Besides the time that she spent with us, she's also helped work out the engineering methodology that we have in our engineering notebook that helps us work out like re-engineering, big design ideas and everything. And she really helped us with that so that we can present those to the judges and win awards like the Excellence Award at the competition. You know, we couldn't win it without them. We'd also like to thank the cleaning crew for their support. You know, we've had some really, really late nights coming home from some of our meetings after we're working on this robot, trying to... And especially Brandy, we really want to thank her for everything that she's done. We also want to thank our coaches, Mr. Wells, Mrs. Wells, and Parker, one of our mentors. Not to mention Mr. Van Allen and Mrs. House, who aren't here today. But we want to thank them for being able to mentor us and to show us all this awesome stuff and to get us all interested in robotics. And last but not least, we want to thank the school for all your support. We wouldn't be here to support and without your support and encouragement, you know, we wouldn't have this entire robotics team. Thank you guys.
So we'd like to present the State Championship Excellence Award that we obviously won with State Championship to the district. And we believe that there's going to be many more of these to come.
So we can't thank you enough, aside from all the other work you put in, but to actually come and share this with us. I know it helps me because sometimes we're going through a lot of sheets tonight. We're approving things, and it's nice to see the results of that. And I will say, I can't promise anything, but there's a room, it's probably 14 by 16. Right now it says like superintendent on the office, but I think it would be a great space.
All kidding aside, I was going to bring that up. So how much space, Ms. Van, or to the team, when you're talking about space you need, how much do you need? Seriously, like, I mean, is it roughly?
Our field is only actually 12-foot by 12-foot field, but having it just be a little bit bigger, maybe...
and specific for it, you said, right? Because you got to move that, is that what I heard you say, or you got to keep...
We have to set up the field and take down the field like every time we want to practice and like move stuff out of the room. It'd be nice to have a place where we can like work and like just leave the field set up, which would save a lot of time every day we practice.
Sure. Well, we will make that happen. We will make that happen. I want to say this, but before I want to just say I got an email from Spencer Wells. Back on March 12th at 7:46 a.m. And he basically goes on to talk about what they achieved, but this is the part that as a very proud superintendent that I love. So then it says, we couldn't have done any of this without the support of the school, especially Mrs. Van, who is a huge supporter and has been working with us, giving her time and really helping the team. We couldn't have done any of this without her, exclamation point. I want a round of applause for Mrs. Van, who's sitting in the back. This board has always said, and I just want to echo, that we do have the greatest teachers, staff members. I hear that, we know that, and this is just evidence of that. great job, guys, and we will absolutely look to see where we can make that room happen because I can work out anywhere. So if you end up taking my office, Mrs. Horn would love that because she loves you guys. Cake.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm a little sad for all of you. You'll never know the pain of literally programming an Atari XE for like 6 hours to get it to move from shades of gray. It was brilliance in my day, I'm just saying. No, great job. Thank you very much.
And there's cake right there in your honor. So everybody, if you want to come up, students, help yourself first, and then everybody else can come get a slice. Board can get a slice of cake.
How about a BBS on 1,200 baud? Just saying.
So if we want to grab some cake, and then we'll get right back into presentation, just kind of grab a piece of cake, head back to your seats, and then we're going to have King and King, I believe.
Yep, King and King. Fantastic.
No, it's never good when we have to follow it. Pack yourself out. It's just gonna be you and I.
I think so. I'm trying to get him back.
Students, there's also cookies up here that were made for the board by Mrs. Morgan's class over at MAG out of their kindness week, doing random acts of kindness. So help yourself to a cookie as well, and a shout out to Mrs. Morgan's class.
We won't say anything.
That's my point. My point is everybody should be involved. I got it. Nobody in robotics. Do it.
How we get things happening.
All right, we're gonna let you get cake as you need, but let the record reflect. We think we can concretely tell you that you will have a space. In discussing here, we're going to be utilizing CSI as flex space as we go through the capital project over the next couple of years. There's tons of space, so Mr. Colboof and his staff were talking. It should be no problem. You have Wi-Fi, dedicated space, so he'll keep you up to date on
You'll
that.
never have to move your stuff. You can stay in one spot. And
That's right. If only everything happened that quickly.
We can do it.
That being the case.
So now I'd like to, our next one is our capital project update. So we have King & King Architecture, and we also have Turner Construction. So, King & King.
It's too bad. It took the thunder out of me. I already had imagined how we could reuse your space, Tom. No, that's great. We got to stop doing our presentations after all this fun stuff because I don't know how to compete with that at all. Yes, absolutely. So we've got an update for you just to keep the board and the public, up to date on what's going on with the capital project. So I'm going to just advance the slide here, and Pat's going to take you through where we are with the schedule at this point in time.
Good evening. I'm Pat Griffin with Turner Construction. Just want to give you a quick summary here of Phase 1, which when we talked the last time, we were in the process of putting packages together. And summer for Phase 1 is 2018, 2019, 2020. And the reason for that is the roof project, we're going to go as one package, and it's going to spread over 3 seasons so we can tie the next phase into the roofing work so we're not kind of wasting some efforts and monies. And the district-wide IT program is going to go forward in Summer 1 and Summer 2, it looks like, with the Phase 1, and that's actually a combination now. So we're going to put everything on the street as one package, so we're currently working through that. And our tentative bid schedule right now is out for bid next month, and we plan on opening bids by the end of April, beginning of May, depending on how everything comes together with SED and where we are right now, and the start of construction right after our award, probably mid-May, early May, and then we'll start the end of May right here on site, and we'll go down to the turf field there, and that'll get taken offline, and we'll start work down there first, and then we'll start moving everything into the different things here for the 2018, 2019 on the site package stuff. Phase 2, right now we've got a target SED submission for May of 2018, which is coming up. SED approval, we're forecasting right now they're running about 40 weeks. So February of 2019, we want to move right into bid and award after that. So we'll be ready for spring construction of 2019, which would take us into 20 and finish out everything in the fall of 2020. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over.
Yeah, so a little bit more detail on the separation of Phase 1 and 2, and I know this is hard to read, but the real easy way to explain it is that the work that'll start this summer is obviously the stadium work, site work that we had anticipated at each of the buildings, also the roofing work, and some of the masonry restoration work. So that's, and the IT stuff is now part of that. So that's really the first package of work. The rest of the work that is, we just talked about, that's in Phase 2 is all the remaining work, and it's really the capital construction work with the auditorium, some of the significant work that we're doing at Millard Hawk and some of the other schools as well. And so just from a timing perspective, we wanted to get some of the more critical infrastructure work basically in the first summer that we could get the work going, so we're really concentrating on getting the buildings buttoned up, especially the roofing work.
Kirk, if you could just talk briefly about the benefits that we have CSI as a swing space. Everybody knows that it was meant originally to be a long-term lease with City BOCES. After they realized the significant amount of upgrades that they would have to, they pulled out after just leasing it as they are right now from us. But for next year they wouldn't be. But for the 1920 and moving on, to be able to utilize CSI as a swing space allows us not only to put it out to bid, possibly a little bit differently, but if you can just talk about the benefits of that and what it does about minimizing the amount of time it takes to do a whole project and cleaning up.
Sure. Well, I think the first benefit is that the robotics program can use it, so that's step one. I think that the next part of it is Tom's right. We're going to be able to take a building that many districts don't have that's fairly unoccupied and use it for whatever we might need it for, to potentially move students and teachers in a temporary fashion into that building, which allows us to take a greater amount of a building footprint for renovation, which, as this design and construction team knows, that whenever we can give contracting teams as much unoccupied space for longer periods of time, it's most likely going to translate into much better pricing from the contractors. We're going to be able to do it in a much faster schedule because we're able to give them, a large piece of the building at the same time, and we won't have to worry as much about the phase construction activities. Plus, it's also safer because you can work pretty much year round and not have to worry about the student-teacher and construction interactions that may happen when you're doing smaller components of a building over a longer period of time.
Thank you, because I really want people to know if we didn't do this, they would have to be cleaned every night, get the dust and everything, so then students can be in the morning, and then redo that process for how many ever years it would take to do it that way.
Yeah, and it's just it can happen that way. It's just less efficient all the way around for everybody. So it definitely gives us future opportunities, not even just for these capital projects, but beyond, and for swing space for other programs that may have a need temporarily or even long term.
I forgot what I was going to ask, but I just remembered. Maybe a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. So it goes out to bid with the understanding we have that swing space, and everybody understands that up front going in, or as we go along, we make adjustments?
What we're doing is that in the Phase 2 submission, which is in May, to SED, we are going to submit to SED a scope of work for CSI, which, if you recall, we had in the voter referendum.
Correct.
It's going to be a very generic scope of work, which is more about any work that we might need to do to update the classrooms, marker boards, things like that, so that we can make it user-friendly for educational purposes. And then that will allow us that kind of period of time when it's sitting down to SED to really decide how best to utilize CSI when we're doing it. So we'll have great flexibility to work that whichever direction we need to.
And one last question. SED approval for Phase 1 is done?
Yes.
Complete, approved?
Well, technically we don't have final approval on the IT piece. It's SED to say is not very efficient right now is an understatement, so to get any communications out of them is unbelievable right now. So we had contact with them. They gave us what I'll call preliminary approval. They had a couple comments. We gave them the information they needed, and now we're just waiting for final approval, which we should have any second now. So.
And then my last question, then we would require one more approval in phase 2, that's from by May of next year? And
Correct.
that's it? That's all we need from SED?
That's all we need.
Thank you.
Yes. So moving along, I just wanted to take a second and talk about capital outlay projects. This causes some confusion with districts that talk about capital outlay. The district is proposing to include a capital outlay project in the budget that you will vote in May. This always causes a lot of confusion because it's a capital project, but it doesn't follow the typical route, because SED in the state of New York set up a threshold of $100,000, which gave districts some flexibility to do some smaller projects more frequently instead of waiting for a huge capital project to try and do everything. And so the $100,000, which is the maximum amount you can spend on a capital outlay, it's not a separate vote. It's a line item in the budget that allows the district flexibility with doing this type of work each year, as long as it's part of the budgetary process. The nice thing about the capital outlay projects, they look and feel like every other capital project. They're small in size, they're quick in duration because they're meant to be a short duration, quick, let's do a very particular scope of work. And then the benefit of it is that the expense for that project is incurred within a fiscal year. The district receives immediate aid back on that expense the immediately following fiscal year, which is very atypical of anything that happens in Albany. So in any case, you get a quick return on that. So it's a line item in the budget. This year we're proposing that specific scope of work is hardware replacement at Brewerton Elementary. If you've ever been in that building, the hardware sets on those doors are pretty much original. In some cases, it's very difficult to even unlock or lock the doors in the classrooms. And so it's an easy, very clearly identified scope of work that was on the building condition survey. It was something that we decided to pull out of this capital project for now because we had all these other pressing, more high priority items. And so now we're able to take care of that as part of a capital outlay. Anybody, any questions about that? All right. And then the last part, which is on everybody's forefront right now, is school security. I was able to stop by for about 40 minutes last week for the kind of public forum, which was great. I just want to talk about some things from more of an infrastructure standpoint that you should be considering and are. But it starts with procedures and protocols, which was really a big effort of last week's discussion to talk about the first responders and some other elements that schools can implement as a front line. The next piece is the communications aspect, which gets into some items that we're doing in the current capital project, which is the upgrades to the communication systems in all the buildings with the public address systems and the phone systems, which will be up to date and can be used in a lot of different ways for immediate communications, both broadcast-wise and then individually to classrooms. And then the tech wiring, which just gives you the baseline infrastructure with the Wi-Fi and a lot of other connectivity to be able to just keep expanding on that communication network, which you don't have that capability now. Which then ties into things like lockdown and communication software, which I know Tom talked about last week, which there's there's a lot of systems out there that, as kind of a frontline defense, give you the greatest level of communications internally and externally and are more software related than infrastructure. We did, as did many districts across the nation after the event in Florida, we looked very closely and had been for about the last decade at how can we improve kind of the frontline defense of the schools. Some of those things that most schools have been undertaking for a while is the enhanced video surveillance, adding video cameras so that you can see what's going on, particularly in front of the school buildings, but also around the entire perimeter. Office entry and vestibule reinforcing and lockdowns so that you have controlled access at each of the buildings. It requires people to actually enter into the offices to sign in, not be anywhere near the kind of public realm of inside the school with the students and the teachers. There's a lot of different variations of how we've done that, even some tougher environments in the Syracuse City School District and other places. So we have a lot of experience with, things that we can do in that front. The other part is there's a huge gamut of things that can be done with interior door and glazing, hardening, as well as security hardware. We've done things from simply, proximity device entry to full lockdown systems that, with a push of a button in the main office, the entire building can lock down without the teachers being involved with that, to digital and electronic access and lockdown to the classrooms and everything in between. So there's a huge variation in what you can do. And then probably in the last 5 years, there's been some great advancements in just ballistic and attack security films, which are high-end films that are in continual kind of evolution. We have some associations with some companies throughout the nation that are at the forefront of this, and they simply, instead of having replacing glazing indoors, we can put a transparent film that nobody will even know that's there, that can be both ballistic level but could also be just vandal resistant, that just slows things down. So there's lots of different options available to schools and other institutions around the nation to do this. We, in the last couple of weeks, just did a quick assessment of all the buildings, of things that we already were aware of, tried to put some dollar values to things. Obviously, with the list of items that I just mentioned, depending on the scale and scope of how far we take these elements at each of the school buildings, you're looking at a total cost of roughly $3 to $6 million to do, from one end of the spectrum to the other, in terms of hardware and films and other things throughout the buildings. It's pretty straightforward. If the board or the community decided that in your discussions that infrastructure work is necessary to get to the end goal, we could look at potentially doing a vote in the fall, in the October to December timeframe, with whatever the value is of that infrastructure work that we might want to put to a referendum, and then we would carry that through, and probably the earliest that we would be able to start any work would be the summer of 2019. So that's kind of the duration and scale of a very hypothetical, high look at what we might be able to do with security.
Kurt, sorry, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead. With the capital project that's already started down the road, I know you would do this, but is there going to be an ability to avoid basically rework or basically tearing down stuff that we just put up? So assuming we move forward with a security capital project down the road, are we going to be able to avoid as much rework as we can in that?
Yeah, in fact, we're doing, if you recall, the infrastructure work in the capital project is really roofs, outdoor walls, and the auditorium, and probably the area that it could have an overlap would be Miller Hawk, because that's the building we're doing the most interior renovation to. The rest of the buildings, the work is fairly isolated and wouldn't overlap with any potential security project. But we could, because we've got the project already scoped and in bid and in SED, we can very carefully tailor that so we're not doing that. The only building that we would have to be careful with is Millard Hawk, because we're doing the corridor walls, which would affect the doors, and so that would most likely already be planned as part of that project, and that would not be part of the security work.
Okay, and two other questions. Second is, and you may have already had conversation with Mr. Colabufo, but if not, so a capital project is one thing. We've talked about the special patrol officers, that's another, but is there a firm, and I'm not asking for the name now, or firms that you are familiar with could recommend to our administration because we need a comprehensive review of everything. You know, these individual things are fine, but if they aren't building towards a bigger plan, it concerns me, so.
And we do.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we do, and we have companies that have already started doing total assessments of school buildings in the central New York area.
Great.
For districts, yep.
All right, and then the last one was around the, if we were to move forward with a security-based capital project, is there any discussion from the state or that you're aware of either mandates that they're going to mandate that all schools do anyway, and whether they do or not, of a better aid ratio? Basically, if I were the state, I would want every school to be doing this, and I would give incentives to do that. Do you know if any of that's been talked about or is coming down the pike?
Yes, they have been talking about it, but the wheels of change in New York State work at a grindingly slow pace. So for that to even get to a point of becoming reality is way down the road, especially as we're in the middle of a budget cycle where there is not additional money to do that, and there's all kinds of other educational needs. So I don't see that happening this year. Could it happen next year? Sure. If you recall, as part of the Smart Schools Bond Act, security was part of that. And so, but that was such a long time ago now that most schools have already gone down the road of a certain element of work associated with that, so it's a little more difficult to
And unfortunately, we're just so used to unfunded mandates.
Yes.
And I know they kind of pulled back a little bit, but they haven't given up on requiring us to have counselors at the elementary and what that's going to look like, but not give us money to do that, which all goes back into making sure that we're maximizing the resources that we have.
Exactly. Yeah. So I you know, what most districts are doing is they're not waiting for the state to come to any conclusion because it will be a ways away. So everybody is proactively just doing what they can do and make sure that they've done the best that they can do and just work towards that.
Yep. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Kirk, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but is there something in the works here within all of this that some sort of air quality is going to be fixed for our elementary schools? Because I see that as a potential security issue too. When it is so hot that all the windows are open, the doors are open, and, you know, it's like a sitting duck. So I have concerns about that.
Yes, there are mechanical renovations and upgrades that have different levels of work at each of the elementary schools and at the middle school and the high school. I want to be careful because I don't want to tell you that we're going to be able to fix all of those concerns, because what we're going to do is we're really focusing in on the base components of the delivery systems, so the boilers and the distribution systems, where we can effectively do it within the scope of this capital project. There will absolutely have to be future efforts related to accommodate what you're talking about, because really the only building we're really touching in a significant way is Millard Hawk, so we will be able to address that more efficiently there. The other buildings, we're going to do what we can to make sure that we're not dealing with too much of the aged kind of support network, and then we're going to have to look for future projects.
And Lori, what we were looking at was what could they do for better ventilation to get hot air out? Because I think when you ran this, I think it was at the exceeding $15 million if we were going to be putting air conditioning in our buildings, which I know that would be a significant impact to the taxes. So all of those things we have to look at. Okay, so then what do all the other schools do that are able to control better, that don't have air conditioning in districts, and they have ventilation systems where it's not stagnant hot air in one spot?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as we prepare for Mr. Colabufo and some budget presentations, I did want to let the VEX team know, I'm sure this is the way you want to spend your Monday night. But if you would like, we can take a couple minutes while Mr. Colabufo gets set up. If you'd like to get your stuff so you can get home and get to homework and stuff, feel free. I don't want you to feel like you can't get your stuff and get out of here, so. hope you don't
Your
mind.
job is more importantly done at home.
Say no more.
Yeah, we're out.
If you had space, you could have just put it in there.
It's true. It's true.
You guys want to grab some cookies on the way out? Help yourself.
And Mr. Colabufo, this does come off your time.
That's okay. Got this down.
Hey, Tom.
I'm gonna do it as a robot. Is it gonna be more popular if I do it like a robot?
Full
I was going to say something, I think because you mentioned it, you already made a note to make sure
All right, we'll. You want to jump? All right, we'll jump right back in. All right, the last time we talked about having a $1.6 million gap that we had to make up to balance the budget. So, just to recap where we left off from the last presentation, the slide should look familiar. The top 3 bullets represent the revenue highlights, and then all the bullets below that represent the expenditure highlights. Again, revenue is the monies that we obviously draw in. I know some students sometimes come in the audience for part of the participation in government, so I just wanted to clarify that. And the expenditures are the money that we spend. A $1.6 billion gap that included all of the additional items that we have already have in place for this 2017 and 18 year that were not originally budgeted for. So what do I mean? So the Dean of Students spends his entire time with students, disciplining with students, talking with parents, building connections. That was not budgeted for following the end of the school year prior to this school year. So that was not in there, but we have actually had that in place for the year. That again allows the administrators, the principal and 2 assistant principals to be in classrooms far more and instructionally be able to, to help make a difference and to support instruction, and it allows our dean to be able to do the bulk of the discipline. Director of Student Support Services and Interventions, that's Mrs. Jen DiBianco. does a great job. In the high school, she oversees the Red Hawk program, which we have some great news when I get to the superintendent report regarding reading scores from our students in that program are phenomenal. I want to give a shout out to that whole program, to Jen, to the teachers, that some of her here that play a role in that, to Vicki Dale as the TA in there, just really positive. As well as she oversees the 8 through 10 transition program, where normally these were students either that were suspended or that they were had a number of different issues, some of it being anxiety, that they weren't able to function in a full day environment. And so this is far better than just sending a tutor home. So that's been really successful. We've also had one additional reading teacher that was at MHE that was not budgeted for, that we needed to hire. The 1.6 special ed teachers was an add. City BOCE services, 2.6 computer education coordinators. You want to call them tech coaches, integration coaches. There's one at the elementary, and then there is one at Mrs. Edwards at the elementary, Mr. Deo at the secondary. The infrastructure as a service, again, looking at this, we utilize City BOCES and RIC that it's 76% aided on, and it's great that we can have that technical support. Part of this also is P-TECH. So I just want to kind of just touch upon that quickly, because I did get some emails from parents a little bit confused regarding P-TECH. So we don't have an option whether we participate or not participate in P-TECH. P-TECH is an excellent opportunity for our students that they never step foot actually in our school. They're picked up at their homes, and then they're immediately from here, they're driven to the location where P-TECH takes place. So P-TECH is actually a 6-year program that they get their associate degree when they finish. They take their Regents exams much sooner than normal, because then there's a lot of other things that are a lot STEM related, whether it's at the Fulton Companies, the Hutamaki, there's Novellus, we've got our local person, Schneider Packaging, and that right there was because there were many, many jobs in our county of Oswego that they weren't able to fill. And we want to keep students here in Oswego, so it was an excellent opportunity. And they said that those students, when they graduate from that program, will have first crack at those opening jobs. That's why they created that. So it's not based on Arwada, who goes, and Arwada is the size. So we're the second largest Arwada right now behind Oswego in the county. It's based on how well they interview. So there's a committee that interviews all students interested when they're in 8th grade, and I can tell you for 2 years running, Central Square has had the most students that have interviewed the best that are in P-TECH. So that is something that we don't control. That is a required amount of money. It did go up because a whole new cohort of 50 new students were in it. So that is something we actually don't control as a district. So then where do we go from here? As we talked about this is a slide. I don't think anybody looks at this and gets excited about it, but that is the reality. This is all accurate information that came from Forecast 5 Analytics. These are, again, projected 5 years. Obviously, the last 5 years that you see on here are projected live birth rates, and we are extremely conservative in our estimate. I've said this before, and I just think I need to repeat it again. We go by as if 95% of the children born in the district will actually enroll in our kindergarten. I say that is conservative because there's been years, and within the past 5 years, that it's been 84, 89, 90, 95, 88. So if we actually said that it was, let's say, 89% or 90%, it would actually show an even faster decline. So this isn't a secret. Chris Todd, the city DS, has mentioned last year that we are rapidly declining. The Seversky study that you can find on our website does show that it's eventually going to level off. Since Beds Day, I believe we've dropped another 75. And it is what it is. We are doing everything in our power to make it as the most attractive district for visitors that will look. We are fully Wi-Fi. We do have devices. We're constantly looking at our programming and provide students with opportunities that Central Square is a place that they want to move to and not move from. The entire county is facing this. It's just that they've seemed to kind of steady off a little bit more than we have. So if you look at this, this is a slide right here that I don't want people to forget about, because we're not investing in buildings, we're investing in students. So it's really, really important, and it was so important why we closed CSI and closed the district office, that we don't want to be investing in buildings that aren't going to be a footprint. The buildings were at 57% before. Now they're at a healthy number. Okay, so balancing the budget, increasing foundation aid. We will address the first bullet, the first dollar sign there, increase foundation aid, at the end of the presentation, but we still obviously do not know how much more we will be getting. Hopefully we will be getting more from the state. Eliminations due to declining enrollments. So we do have that. I share a Google Doc that's live. I actually made a copy, so it's a hard copy that I put in front of all the board members today, but they all have that Google Doc. They've had it all year. They've had it last year when it was last year's numbers, and the principals and the secretaries and district office do as well. So we constantly see the numbers that we have, and if you look at it, you can see that decline that we're talking about. The buildings that normally didn't have dropping of sections have dropping of sections. That is part of that decline from that other slide. Special patrol officers to replace 4 hall monitors. At the high school, currently we have 6 full-time hall monitors. We would be going to 3 full-time hall monitors, but increasing 4 part-time hall monitors at Paul V. Moore that would be in the cafeteria. We also have time built in currently to the teachers' schedules where they actually have, it could be anywhere between 6 or 9 teachers each block that aren't scheduled for anything else except if the principal needed subs because we were down teachers, we could draw from that group. So what we will be doing is we will be having teachers, what they do in, I would say, 99% of the districts, and that they would actually have a hall duty, which would literally mean positioning teachers in a desk at different locations in the hallways that would be asking students for passes. They know the students that are the teachers. That would also allow us to, again, bring in, right now what we were looking at, you'll see on this slide, 3 special patrol officers. 1 would be located at the high school, 1 would be in the middle school, and then 1 would be shared among the elementary buildings, is currently where we're budgeting for right now. Health insurance, the move to consortium, I'm thrilled to be able to say that over the weekend, the last of the bargaining units have ratified their contracts, which means that the district can now move into the consortium, the healthcare consortium of Central New York. That's an additional $855,000 in savings that goes to our already savings that came from going from the retrospective health care plan to the minimum premium that we've already seen benefits from. So that brings a savings of $2.4 million because now we'll be able to bring in all the units. You could not bring in some of the units, you had to bring in all of the units. So I, with our team, had to negotiate all 12 contracts this year, even though all their contracts weren't up, because the bargaining units had said, well, we want to negotiate because basically we know that we're needed to be able to go into the consortium at 100% units. So we did that. We felt that they were very fair. At the next board meeting, the board will vote to approve those. And then once that happens, it starts about a 2-month process to be able to get all the paperwork and all the numbers crunched to be able to then go into the consortium as a district, which is very, very exciting. From a perspective of planning long term, it's a good relief to be in a consortium that consists of 28 school districts, several of them being very large, so it helps us minimize our risk. If we were to get some high cases in our district that could be very expensive, it minimizes that. So we're able to plan better, and there's much more cost savings. And cost savings for all of the people that are in it, because your rates will go down. Administrative restructure, I want to just speak to that again. We had talked about if we kept the current administrative structure that we have right now, it would cost us at least $50,000 to $60,000 more next year. So I want people to understand, when we talked about and the board approved the position of executive principal / director of counseling and pathways to success, that was not, I repeat, not an additional administrator. This year, we had a situation where we had decided that we were going to go with an administrative intern that would be different every single year at our middle school. And the purpose for that was that we wanted to be able to create a good pipeline for our own homegrown talent for teachers to have a really solid full-time administrative internship. Carol Skasha has done a fantastic job in doing that. She's getting everything out of that because she is a full-time administrator in the middle school. But in talking to a counselor in the middle school and just talking with cabinet, we understand the principals in the middle school, we understand the need long term. It's not about Carol, because that was always a one-year position, but it's about consistency and having the administrators that are there, that one of them is not rotating through. Partly because of all of the mandates that they have to be a certain amount of observations of teachers, but also to be able to make those connections with students, it would be the same person. So this year, Carol Skasha had interviewed for the administrative internship. She did an amazing job. The group felt that Carol, and the other people did great jobs too. It was unique that Carol didn't require the district to have a cover leave. That did not play in the role of Carol getting it. Carol is great. She earned that spot. But if we didn't close CSI, we would have still needed that additional curriculum consultant, which was her position. So we're not closing any buildings next year. So if we kept that same model and we had an administrative intern, it would have been another one, we would have had to get a cover leave for that person, which salary and benefit is $100,000. By doing it this way, even with the additional cost of the difference between the executive principal and then one of the assistant principals, or in this case, Carol Skasha's salary, it was still offsetting the $100,000 need. That's why I said it's between $50,000 to $60,000 is really what the savings is going to be for the district, in avoiding having to have a position that required a cover leave. So that was an additional savings. The 15 to 1-to-1 elementary bridges program, it should really say Bridges-like program, because Bridges is a city program, but we wanted to create something for our own 4th and 5th grade students across our Central Square School District that were really struggling. So this is going to start out with 15 students that are in 4th and 5th grade that have not been able to respond to any of the interventions that have been put in place. These are not behavior students. These are students that come in that try their best that just really struggle. So we are additionally hiring a general education teacher, a special education teacher, and a TA to run that program, rather than have these students that are struggling and then they just go off to the middle school. And we know if they don't get that intense year, it's going to be very hard for them to get through. And so that is a program we felt very strongly about. We wanted to look at our resources and say that we're putting out a better product, and we feel with the changes that we made allowed us to do that. Okay, balancing the budget. If you take a look, you can see these are the actual reductions. So at the elementary, at Brewerton, it's a reduction of 1 full-time equivalent, which is again due to the declining enrollment. Millard Hawk, we had a reduction in 2 full-time equivalent positions, again declining enrollment, a 0.5 librarian, and a 0.5 FTE physical education teacher, again due to the declining enrollment. At the secondary level, at Paul V. Moore High School, we had 1 full-time reduction in biology, again declining enrollment, 1 full-time social studies position, declining enrollment, 1.5 FTE, and English as a second language, declining enrollment. And part of that position is it fluctuates. There's an ebb and flow when you have what's now referred to as an ELL, that you can have a huge caseload and then all of a sudden it can drop to 1 student. Because for some of our populations that speak predominantly a different language, they can be transient. So at first you have the need and you have the requirement to have a full-time person, but then all of a sudden they have 1 person. and that you can't justify a full-time position for that. And then also 3 full-time school monitors with the addition of the school resource officers, as well as having teachers now doing hall duty, but also the increase in 4 hall monitors part-time that will be able to be in the cafeteria. Right now there are no part-time hall monitors in the high school. Central Square Middle School, 1 FTE fax teacher, declining enrollment. 0.5 FTE music, declining enrollment. 1 FTE school monitor in the middle school, and again, it's the same reasons why we were talking at the high school. And then 1 interim administrator, which we just talked about, which was part of the administrative structure, which is going to be saving the district overall $60,000 because we don't have that 1 cover leave position that's going to be needed next year. So balancing the budget, I just mentioned this right here. These were the additions. Again, you could take a look. Elementary, it's pretty much what I just mentioned, and then at the secondary, these were the additions, as I just mentioned, the 4 part-time school monitors. We're adding those. We're adding 2 special patrol officers. 1 at the middle school, 1 at the high school right there, and then 1 executive principal / director of counseling and pathways to success. This person will also be able to help bridge that gap. I don't want to say gap, but in any district you have middle school counselors, you have high school counselors. This is also going to be able to serve as that conduit. A big part of what we're doing is our pathways. We want to make sure that when students come into Paula V. Moore, that the counselors at the middle school are able to make those connections at the high school as well, and regarding the students. So it's a consistent approach that the students will be met on a consistent basis, and their progress will be charted, their interests will be identified in those regular meetings, and then we will be able to then say, well, these courses or these courses or these courses for the pathway that best suits you. We also, I remember there was a board member that was talking about the parent portal access, and that is also another thing that we want to make sure is we want the parents to also be aware and involved in the decisions that their children are making regarding different pathways, so it doesn't come as a surprise to parents. Jumping up again, the elementary, as you see, the 1 addition for general education, 1 addition of special ed teacher, 1 addition of a full-time teaching assistant, 1 social work position, and then the 1 patrol officer. So I just want to jump up a second. We've all identified the fact that the district really needs to do a better job regarding its services and pushing those services down to the elementary level, which is the very beginning. So I've mentioned it before that we do have an inverted pyramid of services where some people could say that we've got a lot. I don't want to say we're top heavy. If you ask people, we'll say, well, no, we're just right at the secondary level, but we're definitely light at the elementary. So at the elementary level, you have a school psychologist, and then that is it. So what we have for next year, we have a RISE counselor working for 2 of our buildings, and then the other 2 buildings, we have what you see as mental health. So what do we mean by social work position? So in talking with one of the current TAs over at Brewerton, this person has expressed her interest and shared her background in social work, and is very interested in piloting 1 year just focused on 2 buildings for social work related issues. We think that that would be excellent if we can make that happen, because then that would actually give social work to all 4 of our elementary positions as a start. We can then evaluate that and decide, do we need to go more in that direction? Do we need to look more at counseling instead of social work? All we know is this: we have a growing number of mental illness situations throughout our district, and to wait until students get to the middle school before they actually have those supports, it's waiting too long. So these are things that we're trying to do, and looking how we're spending our money right now, we just want to make sure that we're putting it, being as resourceful as we possibly can. So balancing the budget, taking a look at this again, the technology department, we had some additions and some reductions. The addition is a full-time network administrator. And in getting that will really help us streamline a lot of the things that we really needed to get done. The reduction is 1 full-time computer specialist and a .2 FTE city. That's more of a service that takes place 2 days a week because we're getting that additional network administrator that would be able to take care of that. Every one of these positions, the people have already been spoken to prior to this meeting. So again, balancing the budget. Health insurance really helped us out. It was crucial that we negotiated all of those contracts to be able to get into the consortium because it was an additional $855,000 in savings. For the districts that didn't get into the consortium, there are a lot of districts that I'm sure you see when you open up the paper, whether it's an Oswego paper or Syracuse.com, that you see there are cuts. There are cuts coming in districts. Revenue items, increased appropriate fund balance, increase at $500,000, which brings it to a total of $1.5 million. Now, I want to come back to that part because the very asterisk at the bottom says, awaiting final New York State budget due April 1st. Any increase, which we believe that there will be, we will be able to adjust the appropriated fund balance. But I want to be very clear with this. What we're doing right now, we are trying to right a ship regarding opportunities for students. And it's very difficult to do. There's no doubt about that because there are people connected to those positions, and I understand. Those are the things that do keep me up, but I also know that right now we're sending about 49 more students to our half-day CTE where unofficially the district was capped at 100. So what that means for any parent that wanted to send their child because their child was like a square peg getting fit in a circle hole, and they said, my kid really wants to do what his father does, and that is heavy equipment. Or a child wants to go into cosmetology, or a child wants to go into welding. If they we already met that 100, then they didn't. And then they were going to do the traditional route, which is the traditional route is great for a lot of our students. But for some of our students, their route was more city BOCES. And so we want to be able to say to students, if that is the route that you want, and you know that, and we know that we have students that work really well with their hands, and they're really interested in that kind of work, and it's very honorable, and it pays very well, and those jobs are out there, we didn't want to say no. So therein lies the hardest decision I have to make as a superintendent, and I have to look at all of that and say, okay, we have to balance the budget, but we also have to make sure we're putting out the best opportunities for our students. And in doing that, I have to make very difficult decisions that involve personnel. Staff changes would be a savings of $276,037, which brings us to the balanced budget. Again, April 1st, we will know how much more money we're going to get that we will then be able to offset the appropriated fund balance. So the revenues, since the tax cap legislation has been implemented, Central Square has always stayed within that cap, and this budget is no different. As you see where it says designated fund balance, $1.5 million, that will get changed when we get more money, which we should be getting more money from the state. We will be able to offset that number. This slide right here is just all of the details from the last slide, and all this information you'll be able to access on the website. These are the expenditures, and again, our biggest changes for the proposed budget are the use of the healthcare savings to support staff salary across all units. So as I said, in order to be able to get into the consortium, we had to negotiate contracts that were not due. But that was the only way to be able to get them to the table, to be able to go into the consortium where we knew there'd be significant savings and less, I want to say, risk for a district. And if you weren't operating on that, if you were minimum premium or if you were self-funded, and all of a sudden, like some of the districts unfortunately experienced in Oswego County, they had a spike in some high cases, health cases, which then increased at 46%. So again, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers out there to make sure that we're putting out the best that we can do. So really, if you take a look at this slide right here, salary is where on the left where it says the bigger pie is 45, and then on the right you see 48%. What you see there is the fringe benefits actually come down, and you see salary go up. So salary was at 45%, and then it goes up to 48% with the negotiating of all units contracts. And then what goes down is fringe benefits, because our health care is going to be much better as part of the cooperative of Central New York, which is going to save all of our members in all of our units money because the rates are lower. And it's going to save the district, which pays the lion's share of all of the plans. As you can see, debt service is something you also want to take a look at. That is declining because our state aid is declining, because we were paying off. We just paid off one of our last big projects, which was the stadium. And when that came off, so too did the money we get from the state. So the two go hand in hand. Debt service and state aid. When you have more debt, you get more state aid. When your debt drops off because you made those significant payments, you get less state aid.
What's the reason for BOCES, Tom?
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
1.2 million.
Let me go back. So BOCES, you see, it was up a 13.58%. Now part of that goes up, P-TECH went up. Originally P-TECH was 35,000, Maureen, right? 35,000 the first year. And then the next wave of 50 students came in, and it jumped to, I want to say, 149, 146. And quite frankly, it could be projected at over 300,000 next year. This is one of those things that all the chiefs are looking at. They're looking at how that is basically paid for. It's one of those things that we cannot pull out of. That's county-wide, but we are all looking at that is to say, is that a sustainable option for us as that keeps increasing? The other huge increase is because a big part of that is our half-day CTE kids. We only had, I want to say, 99 last year, and we had 147, 148 this year that felt that they wanted to do it. And again, even with that, we had some parents say, you know, Tom, I know with the full day CTE, you limit that to like 4 students, and you were going with a demographic of students that struggled, but I don't think that was fair. That's an area that I wanted my son to be able, or my daughter to be able to go into, and I understood what they wanted, what they were saying, but part of that was I have to look at the fact that we're already increasing so much of our half-day CTE. I don't want it to be, and I know we have a declining population, I didn't want it that we were even adding more to that declining population with the full-day CTE. So I didn't go all in on the full-day CTE, but we did extensively increase, based on students' wishes. We didn't recruit kids to go half-day CTE. We just this time didn't say no when they wanted to go be heavy equipment or any of the welding or the carpentry or those things. They stated good cases on why they wanted to do that, and we gave them that opportunity. Some things that I did say no to last year for this year was the early college high school. There were districts, a lot of districts in our county that did do that. I did it for a couple reasons. They said originally that OCC was saying that the cost was going to be really, really low, like $200 a kid, and then it was like $2,900 a kid, and nobody was able to budget for that. We had sent nobody. That was really secondary. My first issue was I believe that we have an amazing education program here for those students that want to go college and career path, and I felt that if we emptied the door and sent kids off campus, then that I just felt would be outsourcing. I'm not saying anything against the other superintendents in the county that had that opportunity, but I will tell you right now, Central Square is a large enough district that we provide many wonderful courses in-house that some of our other districts in the county don't have those teachers to be able to do those courses and college level courses and to the extent that we do. So I didn't do that to keep more of our students here at Central Square, and I'm going to look to do the exact same thing next year.
Tom, when you said the figures for P-TECH, is that per student?
No, that is for the whole district. That cost is...
Okay, so it just depends on how many students get interviewed and selected?
No, and we may only have 2 kids that get selected. We still pay all that same money.
Okay. So why did it go up so high in the first
Because
year?
50 more kids joined the cohort. And then the next year would go up because another 50 more kids would go into the cohort.
Okay.
And so it keeps kind of just compounding itself. We can benefit from the fact that we have more students in Central Square. Other districts can say, like, we're paying the same price that bigger Central Square is, and we don't have nearly as many students involved in that. But again, that's how that was created.
I'm not saying we do benefit, but I would say it also hurts. I don't like the fact that we don't have control of it, even though I love the fact that it's an opportunity for the kids. But we're also pulling kids out of our classes in this building and then dealing with the repercussions. So just want to point that out. There are benefits. There are also counter benefits to it.
Absolutely.
And the 1.2 is not sustainable year. I mean, if that continues, that's just not a sustainable path that any of us can live with. So we're going to have to make some challenging decisions at some point, because $1.2 million on $8.3 million is...
Yep. One other question, Tom, with the Bridges program in the elementary schools that we're doing, is that something that we used to send students to BOCES for and we're now bringing in-house, or is that something that we're just creating?
So what you said was, is that something that we used to send students out to like BOCES for, and now we're bringing those students, those type students for the Bridges program, the 1511?
Well, we used to have. They are a gen ed program in most cases. And we used to have, it all goes on a student need. So if you have a student that struggles, in the past we had up to 10 slots for all the different programs. But all the programs cost a different amount of money. So it depends on what you would send a student to. So since I've been here, what we've done is I keep track of the slots on a spreadsheet. As one student exits, another one enters. We've always budgeted the same amount. For next year, what I've done is actually do a needs assessment with the counselors. So instead of just having 10 slots of these random programs and seeing if we could fit a kid into the programs that we have, we did a need assessment with the guidance counselors and said, here are the kids that we have, here are the programs that we need, and we're budgeting it that way. So instead, we kind of went to zero base instead of rollover.
Yeah, so she's talking about the elementary.
Right question. This one, she's talking about the new special ed program.
No, you're talking about the Bridges program in Cole.
Right, the elementary one that you're talking about, adding a full-time teacher and the special
ed teacher, correct.
Right. Were those students previously sent to programs at BOCES? Because you said it's BOCES so I just didn't know.
No, because it's a called Bridges program at BOCES. That's what I thought. That's a behavioral program. This one was Bridges because the school psychs approached Teresa and I last year before the Bridges behavioral program started, saying this is kind of a program to bridge elementary to middle school because the middle school has different levels of supports for students who are struggling. They have a 15-to-1 program, they have a reading program, and different pieces that the elementary students didn't have. So they would stay in ICT with SRI and the other supports, resource if they needed it. So these students have gotten all of those supports, and the program isn't working for them. They struggle, they get frustrated, so we're trying to have both the gen ed and special ed teacher in the classroom for the differentiation, not losing the content support, and really try to focus in on skills to close some gaps and a smaller class so that the transition to the middle school is more successful for those kids and they find and achieve levels of success that right now they're struggling to achieve.
But to piggyback on what you're saying, Christy, what I've taken from it, something that I'm always looking to do is bring back more of our students that are at City BOCES in these programs here, especially when we have a building like CSI that's right there. I'd rather employ our own teachers for students that, again, are stacked. We don't get aid on the special ed students, but it's stacked that it's anything above, $35,000 or $36,000, and we got to pay. So we're always looking at that, but again, it's a fine line of looking at how spread out all their ages are, that they can't, if it was just one program, I would bring all of them back, would be a significant savings. And Chris Todd has even told the chiefs, if you can do that and it's the same age group, absolutely. Where it comes into play is I've been touring with the other superintendents. We looked at Maroon Road. They came over and they looked at our middle school program, the autism program. There are so many different services that come with that.
Yep.
So it's not like it's just one special ed teacher that they're at. They have a behavioral specialist. They have all these other special ed intervention people that work with these students, that it would be like us hiring 6 times more staff members, because it's not just that one special ed teacher that would oversee a class or even 2. But we're constantly looking at that to be able to bring those back. To Andy's point, to part of what Tim was saying is, I am constantly looking to say, okay, the students that are here in the high school that have that more traditional college and career approach, I want to keep them in the halls here at Central Square. We do have students that have that different pathway that is BOCES. But again, we have to be very careful. If there are students that are in BOCES that they're not even attending BOCES, then we need to pull them back here. These are students that have an opportunity to go there and do what their passion is, but if they're not taking advantage of that, then they need to be back here and doing that. And we do watch it. We watch it regularly, is what Connie just said. Right here is just the expenditure detail that just basically touches upon what you just saw on the pie charts. It goes into great detail. And again, obviously, if you're looking at this board or audience and you can't see it because it's tiny, you can see it on the website.
Yeah, Tom, it sounds like when you were talking about BOCES services that you were kind of stating that P-TECH was a primary. I mean, BOCES services isn't just P-TECH.
No, right.
The CTE, right? So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody that was listening, that it's not just those 2 programs that are causing that.
No, that's a good point. There are programs that we send students, let's say behavioral ones, like let's say a 612, that it's just not conducive to have that student in this environment, and it is very costly. Some of them, those programs run as high as $85,000 a student. And so it can get very costly. If a student comes to this district with an IEP that requires them to be at a different location like that, we obviously have to honor that. But no, absolutely, there is a definite cost. It's not just P-TECH. It's also the cost of going from 99 or 100 students that want to take part in half-day CTE to then increasing that, which we did to 149. Can we go higher than 149? Probably not. Again, those are conversations that we have to have with parents saying, look, we really, really need to know. It's not just, well, my kid's going to be good with hands and they're not the traditional route because I wasn't the traditional route, their grandparents were the traditional route. We really have to have our counselors really getting deep into this. So it's not just saying, you know what, yeah, go to BOCES. Because if it is better suited here, we need to be aware of that. And we have some amazing electives here as well. So we're looking very selectively and listening on why those students want to choose the program that they have over there without jamming them in a program to really fit adult needs. So as we see, big thing right here on this slide, actually I'll just jump back a sec. So when the Board of Education adopts a budget proposition, it is essentially the total expenditures only. And that number was $75,049,635. What next? April 23, as you see at the top center. At the April 19th, which again I want to just remind the board, that is a Thursday board meeting because it has to coincide with BOCES board meeting. And that will be, again, that's part of BOCES requirements. That's when our board will vote the BOCES budget. And that is actually April 19, which is a Thursday. April 23, districts must transmit the property tax report card to SED by the end of the next business day following its approval by the school board, but no later than the 24th day before the budget vote. Again, this will also be on the website that anybody can take a look at. April 9th is our next board meeting. We will provide you with an update on the state aid, which will then change the revenue side only I want to clarify, it's not going to change the expenditure part, because what we're doing is we're trying to spend the money more wisely into programming that will benefit students. And so that comes into play, the addition of school special patrol officers and the reduction of the monitors. It has nothing to do with the people and what they do in their job. It's looking at the resources that we currently have within the building, utilizing the staff members that we have currently to be able to do that, and then increasing the number of part-time hall monitors to be able to also be in the building during lunchtime. The hardest decision a superintendent has to do and the board has to look at is when it comes down with personnel. Big part of that too are the health benefits. So if there are already people that we know in their day can do a really good job doing that, and we can bring in part-time ones, that's a significance of at least $30,000 of just benefits alone. So it's very easy for me to stand up and just say, let's do status quo. We're going to just stay where we're at. The unfortunate thing there is we have a declining enrollment. And because of that declining enrollment, we have less students, we have to then take a look at that and then relocate where we're putting our resources to constantly improve the program. So that right there is the budget. It balanced the budget. And then the next step at the next board meeting, the board would have the opportunity to vote on that. Any questions?
Just one note, I'm not sure if it's you, Tom, or Maureen, but on the revenue pie chart slide, just take a look. I don't know if it's formula driven, but it's $1 million off low. So just, I don't want that to show up in the...
Which slide were you talking about, Andy?
Revenue pie chart. That should be 75 million on the 18-19 side. That's all. So I don't know if it's formula driven or not. But.
75, you're saying on the left, 75.41, and then where it's 74.49 on the right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Right. Good catch, though.
Sorry, that's my only comment on that presentation.
That's all right.
My only comment is more of an editorial, and my head explodes when I think about it, but in this state, until the state, and this may sound political and I really don't care at this point, but this population in this state is going to continue on a downward trend until we change something. We're like wrapping our heads around, we're knocking our heads against stone walls, for God's sakes. Not you personally, all of us. This is insanity. 3,200 or whatever the number is. I'm not going to be here in 10 years, I will guarantee you that, but we're going to be in this, we're going to be down to, if we're not careful, this state, not the district, this state has to do something. And again, that may sound, take it the way you want to take it, but this state better wake up, because all we've got is people moving out of the state and not into it. And that's a clear-cut fact, whether you like it or not.
No, and that's the worry, is that we've seen it, that we feel, people in my position feel, that it's been the agenda for the governor for a long, long time to really force districts to then go to a county-wide district. And that's obvious. We've seen that in other states, and that's what we don't want. We don't want to lose that sense of independence and whatnot.
And Tom, with all due respect, that wouldn't even solve the problem. That might sound good in his eyes. That ain't the answer.
Yeah.
That's not the answer. We're going to get people moving into the state. Period. Understatement.
Agreed.
So that's not this board's role, but I'm going to say it public, and I'll keep beating this till the day I die. The state has to wake up and do something about it.
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say for the board and for the people in the audience is we have till April 1st, 1 week left to, in theory, lobby our lawmakers. But again, the problem is our governor, in his wisdom, has taken. So it used to be called 3 men in a room. Hammering out this final week, because when you have to walk into the Capitol, at least you have to face your constituents. The governor now has moved it to the governor's mansion, so they don't even have to do that. So the total blatant taking us, elected officials, out of the process, again, to Tim's point, is mind-blowing to me. And you have a board of regents, again, that is in all its imperfection, recommended twice the amount that our lawmakers have decided to give to education this year. Twice that was their recommendation to keep basic levels of service. So any lobbying by the board this week, if you can find someone that will listen, would be great. But it's they just keep making this hill taller. So.
Yeah, agreed. Is that it?
And lastly, if I offended anybody, I apologize, but that's exactly the way I feel, and I'll keep beating it. So.
I don't think you offended anybody. Well said. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Colabufo. Thank you, Maureen. I know he's presenting probably a lot of your slides, so thanks for all the work on that. All right, with that, let's go into our reports. Can I get a motion to approve the March 7th, March 12th, and March 15th Board of Education meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. McCarthy makes the motion. Mrs. Wood is the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
I'll abstain.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at, although I did make the motion, I know that. I'm going to still abstain because I wasn't at the March 12th.
Thank you. So, for Mrs. Fishman, so it's a 7-2. We have Mr. Buddy and Mr. McCarthy abstaining. Thank you for catching that, or for correcting me on that. With that, we'll go to unfinished business. Mr. Colabufo, again, you have the list in front of you, so don't feel like you have to, but on district-wide safety and security, patrol officers, Naviance, access by parents, and potential transportation for UPK, any updates that you'd want to provide?
I would say Naviance, we're still looking into that. We want to be able to make sure that, like, the parent portal access.
Sorry. The Naviance, the parent portal access, we're still looking into this, and because, again, as I just said, alluded to a little while ago, we want to make sure parents have the opportunity to be able to look at what their own children are looking into, pathways. Potential transportation for UPK, we're going to know more in a couple weeks. April, the questionnaire that was on every kindergarten application that basically talked about if there was availability of transportation, would you take advantage of this? They'll give us more information as opposed to saying, yeah, we're going to do all of this, and then we realize there's nobody that's
Do you know a rough date for that? And the reason is,
Yeah,
will we have that in time to impact the budget?
We do.
Technology. The due date is the 13th for all UPK registrations to be back. So I will wait a couple days because there's going to be stragglers. There always are. And then I plan on pulling them, looking through them either the 18th in the afternoon after I bring ELA tests back, or the 19th in the morning.
Sorry, I don't have my calendar in front of me. So the 19th is a
Thursday.
That's okay. Got it. Okay, so the potential for this is workable within the presented budget, or will be within the presented
Because of our healthcare savings, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's all I want.
District-wide safety and security, again, we had a great forum. I want to say there was about 180 to 200 people. It was packed in here with 22 tables filled. We are currently, as we said before, looking to get to start 3 school resource officers, special patrol officers. And I believe that is all right now, additional things that I can have to share for unfinished business.
All right. Any questions from the board on unfinished business? All right, thank you. All right, we'll go into board member reports. I'll start just by letting the board know that Mrs. Fishman, Mrs. Nickerson, myself, and Mrs. Wood have all volunteered to be on the board recognition team. Mr. Colabufo has got his representatives from the district, and so we'll have our first meeting in the month of April. Ideally, I'd like to tie it into a board night if there's not another committee already meeting beforehand. I don't want to pull everyone out on an additional night, but I don't know how that works with the staff of the district, so I'll let you know through email. And that's probably the last update you'll get on board recognition until the committee comes back and presents something to the board, right? It'll just stay on there. And then I covered the lobbying portion. I think that's it. Anything else from board members? And actually, Reagan, can I put you on the spot a little bit? No, I saw a blurb. Can you just kind of fill in the board a little bit if they didn't see it? There's like a Disney-themed senior citizen event, which I just thought was really cool.
Yeah, so I don't know, is that on? So every year, the student government, just like we hosted our leadership conference, we do our annual senior citizens dinner. Usually every year it's held at the middle school, and this year we always tie it in with our conference theme. So this year it's Disney, it's going to be like a royal ball, and we invite all of the local senior citizens in all of the local homes to come, and we have the same people come back every year. They all know our names and they know who we are, and we play games with them, we dance with them, and so it's just a fun night for all the seniors.
Good question. 55 and up, or just if they consider themselves a senior citizen?
When is it?
I'm not looking at anybody.
When? What's the date?
April 9th. At the middle.
Great event. I love it. Anything else at the board? This is kind of your open forum here. So.
Yeah, so we have this reading of proposed district policies coming up, and there's no issue there really, but what I would like to wonder is if maybe we want to talk at some point about the, I guess it's least restrictive environment. Where does that come from anyways, first of all? The state had
Yeah, so I gave you that, guys. Did you saw the response?
Yeah, I just want you to talk about it in public, so.
Teresa, if you want to hop up, I think what he's referring to is the least restrictive environment.
And I know it's been around for a while. This isn't like a first year thing. I know it's been around. So.
It's been around forever.
Yeah.
It's a state ed requirement. Least restrictive environment is what we want for every child. It's where they're educated with their gen ed peers. We try our best to keep them in with their gen ed peers, but sometimes situations arise, whether they transfer here to us or through accommodations and all of that, modifications, we can't maintain them here. That's when we look to something else. It could be a special program within our district. It could be a program at BOCES. But least restrictive is what we want for everyone. It's just sometimes we can't maintain that.
Okay. So it's mainly for the person with a disability.
That has to do all with special ed. It's a Part 200 regulation.
All right. So, and I'll just throw this out there. If there is a special needs person that is creating a distraction for an entire classroom, does this LRE prevent us from doing anything with pulling that student out because they're a distraction to the rest of the classroom? Or do we have to keep them in there?
We need to look at data. We need to look and see what's happening. Has a behavior plan been created? What's going on to make them like that? You'll see when I put memos in for teaching assistants. That's one of our reasons why we, especially in elementary school, trying to keep them in a least restricted environment so that they can be with their gen ed peers, learning strategies, learning how to behave in a classroom. Sometimes it takes more time, but we work to see, we work very closely with the school psychologist and the principal to see what's causing issues, what kinds of issues.
Yeah, and I could understand why you'd want to try to do that as your first approach, but when it doesn't work,
we come back to the table and we talk about it. And we have removed students. A committee on special education, for any kind of move we do like that, there has to be a committee meeting.
Now, for people that are identified, that doesn't occur till second grade? I heard this.
No, we start, if you look at what Tom had sent you, we start identifying students as preschoolers. It says preschooler with a disability. We don't tag one of the 13 designations on them in preschool, but no, it starts whenever we have, mostly in kindergarten, it's speech.
CSSD meetings.
Yes. but mostly kindergartners usually come in with a lot of speech issues, and that's where that gets them in the door with services. But no, we identify when there's a need, when someone brings it, a parent brings it to the table, a teacher realizes something, they start collecting data, they'll bring it to the school psychologist. So there's no age limit. We actually have early intervention.
But what I think, Bill, what I think you might be alluding to is they get at a really young age, they get, let's say, speech and language impaired, but then the bigger diagnoses, like, sometimes don't present themselves until end of second grade, third grade.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard second grade being some sort of...
And that is where at first they can recognize that, but then some of the testing it's not, depending on what is the student struggling with. But again, it is really important that all teachers, when you have a student, let's say there's a student that throws himself on the ground, that we're following a behavior plan. We're not just simply saying, and I don't believe that we have that in this district, where people are just saying, we got to get rid of this kid. Because we have students that struggle with different things. And I publicly said my own child is highly autistic, that yes, there are times that he's got to get up and walk around. But again, the fact that at home we're constantly on it and regulating that, and we know there's sensory things, so we're very proactive. But I hear what you're saying. I wouldn't want it to be such a distraction that the other kids in the class, nor the teachers able to do that.
Yeah.
In my situation, I personally said I didn't want him to have a one-to-one, even though he qualified for it, but I told the teacher, if it becomes a distraction, then absolutely I want you to let me know that, and we'll go to a one-to-one. And I know, talking with parents, they're in a very similar situation with that. And I know that the teachers, we've just got teachers with a heart of gold here that want to put all that in place. With that being said, if it continues and it is a major distraction, and we've changed and we've done behavioral interventions and all those things, and it's not working, then it now exceeds the least restrictive environment, and they have to go into a special program.
Okay. Yeah, that's it for now. I mean, I might have more questions, but that answers it for now. Thank you.
I have one follow-up question for Mrs. Ross. Do we have ICT classrooms in kindergarten?
No, most schools don't.
Okay.
Just because we have so many students that come to us that have never been in any kind of educational program, we really need to see how are they doing. So there are not many schools at all that have ICT at kindergarten level. We started in first grade. You can start to tease it out a little bit to see where the issues are.
And I guess my only follow-up question to that is, if we are identifying them in preschool and they very obviously, or theoretically would need in the UPK classroom, would qualify for what would constitute an ICT classroom with a special ed teacher placed, are we not classifying them as that in kindergarten? Like declassify? They
No.
still get the speech, they still get any occupational therapy things that they need, but so we're just waiting to see how they react in kindergarten to see if they need to go into the ICT classroom versus just staying in the strictly gen ed
Classroom just with accommodations or with the related service. Of the meetings we've sat in so far this year that are transitioned from CPSE to CSE, now one has been academic. It's been more the behaviors, the speech, the occupational therapy, where then when they come in, you can classify them as speech language impaired, and they'll get the OT, they'll get the speech, they might need PT. But the ones coming in right now, we haven't seen any need for an academic part.
And then the only thing we owe it to the parent, we owe it to the kid, that if we put a student, let's say in kindergarten, that has never had any pre-K or whatever reason why, and we do that, then that student is then going to develop with almost like a crutch, knowing that I have this TA right here to be able to do this, and that if it is a situation where they get past that, they get into the routine and they don't need that, well then that's great, as opposed to that student then developmentally adjusting to something that's there. But to Phil's point, if we do all of this and it's not working, it clearly is not working, that's when we have to look at the next measure.
Go back to committee and talk about it.
Correct. Because at the end of the day, that wouldn't be good for that child that's struggling in that situation.
What we do have, just to piggyback on, last year we put in one kindergarten TA in every elementary building because we had so many students coming into school at all 4 buildings that had never been in an educational setting. And they were there to help them get adjusted, help them transition. I can think of one that maybe we've put a TA on from last year. Everyone else has been able to transition through, or they will be, where they're not going to require additional adult support. They needed that transition into school, and now they can go on. They might need other accommodations, but they're not going to need that additional adult support.
Any questions? Well, I'm going to add my 10-second commentary and simply say, no, this topic is important to me because my wife's a special education teacher in a different district. But I'll simply say, of all the ails of public education, this area makes me the proudest to be a board member because, there are a lot of, and I'm not bashing all of them, but private schools, charter schools, and other places out there that wash their hands of dealing with anything other than something that's going to make their numbers look great. So I'm really proud of public education for investing in all kids, not just select kids. So thanks. That's true.
29. I timed it.
All right, with that, any other open topics from the board? Superintendent's report. Glasses were in your pocket.
All right. Congratulations to the members of the middle school percussion on their performance in the competition at Central Square Winter Drumline Home Show. Also to the high school Red Hawk Regiment Winter Drumline on their outstanding performance and first place in competition. The Central Square Varsity Winter Guard placed third in their class on their trip to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for the Power Regional Guard competition. They competed with 13 other guards. Based on their auditions, the following two students earned a performance seat and will be performing in the Oswego County Orchestra Festival as a member of the high school's Honors Symphonic Orchestra. Congratulations to Jillian Julian and Hannah, I always do this, Slowski. The business department at Paula V. Moore High School is hosting a career day on April 6th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Did I just say what I said? Thank you. I should probably clean these too. Friday, April 6th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. If there is anyone interested in speaking about their career, please contact Nicole Heath or someone from the business department. The community forum on safety and security was a huge success. As I said, we had almost 200 people in attendance. They came with some great concerns that they were able to share and ideas as part of a Google Doc. So there was an administrator at each of the 22 tables, and they were constantly putting down feedback. We did that approach because we didn't want to just open it up to everybody, and then we would just get a limited amount of concerns. We wanted to be able to get all of them. Then, as you know, then the following day, there was another travesty in a school in Maryland that was a little bit different than the travesty on the grand scale of what had taken place in Florida, but still nonetheless a tragedy. A lot of things came out of that. One of the things, swipe cards. So we made sure, and we do, we have swipe entry cards to all the trooper vehicles that they needed. So there's like a state police Central Square, or it just says State Police 1. It doesn't say Central Square on there, just in case one of those cards would get lost. People would know what building it goes to, or what district. So that's for the all the troopers, and then our local PD. It basically says LP1, LP2, LP, for all of our local police departments, so they could have access into all, and that's something that came out of this meeting as well. Also, we're going to have software that we're going to invest in. The price was phenomenal, and it's 76% aided. The company's called Navigate, and there's many school districts in Oswego County and a ton in Onondaga County and across the state that are going to be purchasing this software. And the price, it's ridiculously cheap given the fact that it's 76% aided. But what it does is it's software on phone or any device that allows anybody to be able to call a lockdown. So let's say you're an elementary teacher, you got your kids outside playing, but you see somebody trying to break in or just trying to get as many doors as they can. They immediately can trigger it, which sends off an alert to all people in that building that says lockdown, and then they can actually just text in the commentary and people could all see that. This is phenomenal. It also allows all pictures, up-to-date pictures, 360-degree view of every single room in every single district that all of our first responders would be able to have access to. Only first responders. It's not something that we give out for obvious reasons, but our our police officers, our firefighters would have access to this because they would know then what they were coming into. So again, this was a company that I saw twice present, once with a bunch of other superintendents in Albany, and then once we just went to, myself, Maureen, and Arena went to a presentation at OCM BOCES. And it's the real thing. It's software that really gives our teachers the ability to be able to do this. And all of the current up-to-date drills and practices are in there. So as we change them, they get changed on everybody's. Someone doesn't bring a binder and say, oh, this is what we do in a lockdown. They have everything, and every time we update it, it gets updated for everybody. So we'll get more information on that and training on what that really looks like. But it's really no additional work for teachers. It just gives them more power than to have to see something and not be able to call a lockdown. So we love that. So again, a lot of great things that are happening. We had, I alluded to this before, our Red Hawk program. I just got back. I want to thank Jen DiBianco, Vicki Dale, Fred Kiwanis, Katie Gosgian, Kim Lacey, Carrie Faulkner, Jen O'Malley, Jen Shantz. What they've been doing with these students in this Red Hawk program, their actual scores for reading have really increased. So that is actual data that we have to show that this works when they look at their STAR testing. So that's awesome. It's a group effort. Those teachers that are involved in that, they love being in that room. They've commented to me, and it's exciting to see. It's a great job. Just again, Ron Haldeman had sent me Central Square Novice Guard scored above Perry Junior High School. Central Square Junior Varsity Guard scored above Union Endicott, North CNS. North Stars Junior High, Baldwinsville JV Winter Guard. Liverpool Junior Varsity, Sherburne, Irville Winter Guard. Central Square Varsity Winter Guard scored above ESM. Varsity Guard, Baldwinsville Varsity Guard, and Liverpool Varsity Guard. Congratulations to all the members on the Central Square Red Hawk Regiment. High school winter drum line. The high school drum line, as I had said, placed third. Then it just went on. I'm so impressed, not only by the students, but I say it enough. The parents get here at the crack of dawn, and they go all day with their volunteering. It's pretty amazing, and again, it's a testament to the parents that we have and their high level of volunteering, and the students for all the work, and the staff, instructors. It's great. And I also, you see tons of teachers and administrators, staff members of all different units that are there representing or cheering on the kids, and I just think that's great. And that ends my superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. Palabufa.
Andy, I just have one follow-up. You reminded me, Tom, at the chamber event that we went to regarding school security and related to business security as well, but I feel like the main point that was gotten to that was drilling, you know, that you should run drills and things like that. Now, I know we do the lockdown drills, but have you looked into doing an active shooter drill? I know some districts in the area have, and I just wanted to know if you...
Yes. So I've had teachers in the high school and the middle school say, hey, look, we would love to do... There was a huge a feeling of appreciation that we brought in the person to talk, the active shooter to talk, and we are bringing him back for PD. But we absolutely want to mimic a drill, staff only, like Baldwinsville did, staff only, because there's power in that when we want to do that. Something that he had mentioned at that we did with the chamber was pretty traumatizing for elementary kids that were hiding in bathrooms and crying. I absolutely would not have elementary kids or any students involved in this. It's first and foremost, it's very important that the staff know what to do and feel comfortable. It can be very traumatizing, and I would say to the staff that they don't have to, because if it's a staff member that really struggles, I went through one of these at Oneida years ago, and it really impacted some staff members, and I would say in a negative way, because in the panic mode that they went in, when it's replicating and putting tables up in front of doors, and there were some teachers that just said that was very scary. Now, with that being said, there are other teachers that said it's scary, but that's why we need to practice it. So again, I want to be respectful of those staff members that feel in that situation. I just want to be respectful of that, but again, I absolutely want to have that drill with all of our staff members. Yep.
Any other questions?
Just one comment on it's interesting with these shootings. the Parkland gets obviously a ton of press. Don't lose sight of a good guy with a gun stopped a much more tragic incident in Maryland recently. So, absolutely.
On a happier note, so we can end on a happy note, just wanted to throw out there, I just looked it up. Varsity Guard is actually 21st in the country right now, out of over 128 that are going to WGI.
That's awesome. All right, well, thank you. We're going to move on to action items. Can I get a motion that we accept the second and final reading of the 13 policies listed and the deletion of the 14th policy?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. McCarthy makes the motion,
Do you want me
second
to-
by Mrs. Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Before we do the next two, Mr. Colabufo, I'm not sure, or Mrs. Ladd, do we need to read either of these resolutions? I don't think we have to do the capital outlay, but I'm not sure about the bus purchase. You do read it, okay. All right, so can I get a motion to accept item F2, the approval of the capital outlay project? This is the one that was discussed earlier for $100,000.
I'll second.
Is that something we were going to consider tabling?
Yep. So, motion by Mrs. Wood, second by Mr. McCarthy.
Now we can discuss.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think that was something that we considered tabling just because we don't want to move forward spending that kind of money if we have to rip everything out potentially.
The comments that I made to you earlier about if we're going to replace door hardware, and that was included in the security presentation by by King and King, if it's something, now, Mr. Patch said it probably, it's not something relating to hardware that usually has to get upgraded with respect to the lockdown drills and things like that, or the lockdown features. But to the extent that we would then have to rip all that out, if we were going to move to a system like that, I would have concerns about spending the money now and then ripping it out in 2 years if we do decide to do security upgrades. So if we were to, are we just approving that line item, not necessarily what it's for?
No, you're approving what it's for also
Okay.
because we need to advertise what it's for. Even though it's on that line item, it's usually one of the little blurbs on our budget statement and all
Okay.
that type of stuff.
So in that
But
sense,
was-
could we just make sure that it's compatible with whatever system he's considering putting in?
And that's what we discussed this in our meeting. This will be, whatever is picked, that will be the precedence. And then the rest of the buildings will have that. That will be the
Okay.
pick of the
Okay,
system.
so it would be compatible with
Yes.
something like that,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you, Matt.
I'll make a motion to accept F3, the approval of the library tax proposition.
And I will second that. So motion by Mr. McCarthy, second by Mr. Martin. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, and give me 1 second. I can read this for us. I make a motion that we accept the approval of the bus purchase proposition, which I will be reading now. Whereas the Board of Education shall purchase and, at the option of the board, finance 9 student transportation vehicles, which include 7 65-passenger full-size buses and 2 30-passenger buses at an estimated cost not to exceed $987,045, including necessary furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, and all other necessary costs incidental thereto, and to expend a total sum not to exceed $987,045, which is estimated to be the total maximum cost thereof, and levy a tax which is hereby voted for the foregoing in the amount of $987,045, which shall be levied and collected in annual installments in such years and in such amounts as may be determined by the Board of Education, and in anticipation of the collection of such tax, bonds, notes, or installment purchase contracts are hereby authorized to be issued or executed at one time or from time to time in the principal amount not to exceed $987,045, and the tax is hereby voted to pay the interest on said obligations when due. That is the motion, or that is the resolution. I made the motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. This has to be a roll call vote. Mr. Martin votes yes. Mrs. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Bedworth?
Yes.
Mr. Buddy?
Yes.
Mr. Fish, or Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
It is unanimous. The resolution is declared adopted.
Make the motion to accept F5, the approval of the Board of Elections Memorandum of Understanding for the 2018-19 school board elections.
Mr. McCarthy, can I have a second? Mrs. Wood, any discussion?
My only question on that is, are we holding votes at the town hall in Cleveland again this year? Is that our polling place? Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
And I'll make the motion to accept F6, approval of textbooks.
Mr. McCarthy, second.
I'll second.
By Mrs. Nickerson. I'll open it for discussion. I'll just make one comment. It's required because it's a college course. I'm not sure why the college course is using an old version of a book when there's newer versions available, but we don't have an option, so I'm just making that note for you. I don't understand it, but so with that being said, all those in favor? Yep.
Hold on.
More discussion?
Yes, so this just says cost of the textbook, and it's 14 pages, and I skimmed through it, but does it actually have a total cost, or?
So we're only approving the textbook.
That we can use it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all this motion is for.
Okay. And then that goes under some budget item for textbook? Yeah, okay.
Yep. Other discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous.
To the two math coordinators, thank you for spending your evening with us.
Yes, and I hope it didn't take any offense at that. I just don't understand why the college is doing that. Because, so the textbook is mandated for the college course though, right? Yeah, perfect. So the revisions to edition 5 or whatever it is are probably inconsequential. Perfect. Thank you. Great.
And I will make a motion to accept G in its entirety.
All right,
I'll
so
second
motion to
that.
accept item G, second by Mr. Bedworth, and this is recommendations on the Committee of Special Education, approval of non-instructional supervisors tentative agreement, approval of donations, and approval of and disposals of surplus property. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. I'd like to thank the Community Endowment Foundation for their donation to the athletic department to the tennis team. Very nice and appreciated. And with that, I will make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education hereby moves into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of a particular person with action to follow. Second. Can I have a second? Second. Mr. Loyer, any discussion? All those in favor? It passes. Thank you. We will return and finish up our final votes.